Fifth wave. That phrase is already doing work on your brain because it implies a pattern, it implies escalation, it implies the earlier waves were tests, and this one is the real thing. And then comes the part designed to lock in fear, the hypersonic missile Israel cannot stop. Here's what you need to understand before the headline becomes your reality. In modern missile warfare, cannot stop is almost never a fact. It's a frame, it's a psychological weapon. Because the moment people believe a defense is hopeless, behavior changes, panic spreads, pressure rises, and leaders get forced into worse decisions. So tonight, I'm going to translate this in a way that's actually useful, not denial, not doom, mechanics. Because the real story isn't whether a missile is hypersonic. The real story is whether this fifth wave is designed to do something different than the last four: compress warning time, stress the sensor picture, and increase the chance that a small number of warheads leak through. That's how unstoppable gets manufactured in real life, not by magic, by probability. Now, let's clarify something that the internet keeps mixing on purpose. Hypersonic literally means faster than Mach 5. By that definition, a lot of ballistic missiles are hypersonic during parts of flight. That doesn't mean they're new. It doesn't mean they're invincible. It means they're fast. The modern fear around hypersonics is about something more specific: maneuverability at speed, unpredictable flight profiles, and a shorter decision window for defenders. So when you hear hypersonic missile Israel cannot stop, you shouldn't hear game over. You should hear someone is trying to sell you the idea that the defense problem just became impossible. And that's not the same thing as it becoming impossible. Now, what does fifth wave likely mean? It usually means the attacker has already launched multiple rounds of strikes, separate windows spaced out in time, to do three things at once. 1. Keep the defender on edge and burn down readiness. 2. Gather information. Yes, even attacks can gather information about reaction times, defense patterns, alert behavior, and what gets prioritized. 3. Increase the odds that something finally slips through when the defender is tired, when the system is saturated, and when the public is already emotionally exhausted. That's what waves are for. Not just damage, pressure. Now let's talk about the word cannot stop, because I want you to understand the difference between perfect defense and effective defense. No modern missile defense system promises perfection. None. Because defense isn't a force field, it's a filter. A filter works on probabilities. It's judged by leak rate, not by zero. So, Israel cannot stop it is almost always a dishonest way of saying something more nuanced. Israel can stop most, but not necessarily all, especially under sustained, complex pressure. And that distinction matters, because the attacker doesn't need all. The attacker just needs one. One leaker that hits a symbolic area. One impact that creates a viral image. One night where the public feels exposed. That's how pressure campaigns work. Now, what could make this fifth wave feel different from the last four? Three ingredients: saturation, compression, and uncertainty. Saturation means more things in the air at the same time: missiles mixed with drones, decoys, different angles, different timing. The goal is to overload the decision chain: detect, track, identify, decide, engage. Compression means less time to make those decisions. A faster, more aggressive flight profile, or a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, or simply a launch window that reduces early warning, any of these can shrink the timeline from minutes to think to seconds to react. Uncertainty means the attacker is trying to confuse the defense picture, hit sensors, jam, use decoys, create clutter, so the defender is never fully sure what they're seeing until it's too late. And if you're wondering why these three matter so much, here's the answer. Air defense doesn't fail when it's bad. It fails when it's forced to be perfect under impossible conditions. Now let's address the hypersonic claim itself the right way. If someone is claiming a specific hypersonic missile was used, Mach 10, Mach 15, Mach 17, you should automatically ask the adult question: is it repeatable? Because war isn't decided by one impressive object. War is decided by what you can do again tomorrow. If this hypersonic capability is real, operational, and decisive, you should see a pattern: repeated use, repeated penetrations, and observable defender behavior changes. If you see one dramatic claim and then nothing, you're probably watching marketing. And marketing is still dangerous, because marketing can change behavior even when the underlying capability is limited. Now, let's talk about what Israel cannot stop would look like if it were truly real. It would look like a rising leak rate over multiple nights. It would look like repeated impacts in spite of layered defenses. It would look like the defender changing posture dramatically, moving assets, dispersing operations, changing alert policies, prioritizing only the most dangerous tracks because the system is overwhelmed, and it would look like independent reporting converging on the same technical facts, because real strategic change leaves a trail, fake narratives mutate, real events stabilize. Now, here's why fifth wave and hypersonic are being fused into one fear story: because it creates inevitability. If it's the fifth wave, your brain assumes the attacker is learning. If it's hypersonic, your brain assumes the defender is helpless. Put them together, and you get the dopamine conclusion: the shield is failing. That conclusion spreads faster than any evidence. So here's the disciplined interpretation: a fifth wave likely means sustained pressure designed to increase leak probability. A hypersonic claim likely means the attacker is trying to compress time and increase psychological impact. Neither automatically proves no defense can stop it. Now, let's talk about the real hidden danger that most people don't see until it's too late. The danger isn't the missile itself. The danger is what it forces the defender to do. Because if defenders believe a small number of threats have a higher chance of leaking, they have to make hard choices. Which threats get priority? Where do we concentrate interceptors? Do we intercept early or late? Do we conserve for the next wave or spend now? Do we tighten alert policy, even if it increases public fatigue? And those trade-offs are where mistakes get born. That's why the fifth wave matters more than the headline, because the fifth wave is when the defender's decision fatigue is highest. Now let's make this concrete, because otherwise this stays too abstract. Imagine 4 nights of repeated sirens, intercepts, impacts, uncertainty. By night 5, people are tired, response times slow, the public's trust is stretched. Now, the attacker launches a wave that looks slightly different, timed differently, angled differently, mixed differently. Even if the defenders are still highly capable, the environment becomes less forgiving. A single late decision can turn into a leak. A single leak can turn into a viral narrative of collapse. That's the attacker's best win condition. Now, what does this mean for Israel's defenses specifically? Israel's defense posture is layered. Different layers handle different threats: short-range rockets, drones, ballistic missiles. The advantage of layers is resilience. If one layer is stressed, others can still contribute. But the weakness of layers is complexity. Complex systems can be stressed by mixed attacks that force rapid prioritization. So, cannot stop is the wrong phrase. The more honest phrase is, the system can be stressed. And a stressed system can still be effective, but it becomes more expensive and more psychologically fragile. Now, let's talk about why hypersonic claims hit so hard psychologically: because speed feels like destiny. When people hear Mach 15, their brain doesn't think Mach numbers vary with altitude. Their brain thinks no time. And no time feels like no protection. That's why the narrative is powerful even when it's not technically precise. Now, here's the part that separates tourists from people who actually understand how these conflicts evolve. The attacker doesn't need a perfect hypersonic weapon to achieve a hypersonic effect. What do I mean by that? If your warning time is already short and you reduce it just a little more, the public experience changes dramatically. If your defense chain already has limited engagement windows and you compress them just a little more, the probability of leakage rises. So even a small shift in the threat profile can produce a huge shift in perception, and perception is the battlefield. Now let's talk about the one thing that really decides whether the cannot stop it story becomes true: sensors, not interceptors. Sensors. Because interceptors are the last link in the chain. If you see late, you decide late. If you decide late, you engage late. And the later you engage, the more you risk debris, fragments, or a dispersing payload, creating multiple hazards even if the intercept technically works. This is why modern attackers target radars, command nodes, and communications, not because it instantly collapses defense, but because it compresses time and increases uncertainty. So if you want to understand the fifth wave, watch for the part people ignore. Are sensors being attacked or degraded? Because that's when the contest shifts from stop the missile to can we even see clearly enough to stop it consistently. Now, I'm going to give you the three signals you should watch to know whether this fifth wave is truly a new phase. Signal 1: repeatability of the claimed weapon. If the same hypersonic system is claimed again and again, and the impact pattern changes in a consistent way, that suggests something real. If the claim appears once and then vanishes, treat it as messaging. Signal 2: defender behavior change. If Israel changes alert policies, tightens restrictions, disperses assets, or shifts defensive posture in a way that suggests the threat profile has changed, that matters. Behavior is the truth leaking through the curtain. Signal 3: leak trend line. One leak is tragedy. A rising trend is strategy. If impacts become more frequent across multiple waves, it suggests saturation or compression is working. If impacts remain rare while interceptions remain frequent, it suggests the cannot stop story is mostly narrative warfare. Now, let's address the emotional side, because this is where most people either spiral or shut down. A difficult night is coming narrative is sticky because it gives people a sense of control through anticipation. It makes fear feel like preparation, but anticipation can become self-harm if it becomes doom. So here's the healthiest, most realistic frame. In a probability war, a difficult night is always possible, but unstoppable is almost always a sales pitch unless it becomes repeatable. Now, what happens after a fifth wave? There are three realistic paths. Path 1: the fifth wave is loud but doesn't change the fundamentals. Interceptions remain high, impacts remain limited, and the hypersonic narrative fades because it doesn't produce a repeatable shift. In this path, the goal of the attacker is psychological, and the defender's job is to maintain trust and routine. Path 2: the fifth wave is part of a sustained pressure campaign. Not necessarily bigger every night, but consistent enough to grind down readiness and raise the chance of occasional leakage. In this path, the defender's job becomes sustainability: interceptors, maintenance, sensor repair, and public endurance. Path 3: the fifth wave produces a high visibility leak. This is the dangerous one. Not because it proves defense is useless, but because it creates political pressure to escalate. One visible strike can change the decision environment more than 100 interceptions. And that's when the war becomes harder to control, not because anyone wanted that, but because the public narrative becomes a force. Now I want to end with the clean takeaway that keeps you grounded. Israel's shield is not a myth, but it is not a promise of perfection. Hypersonic claims do not automatically equal unstoppable weapons. The fifth wave matters because repeated pressure changes probability, and probability changes behavior. So don't let the headline decide your reality. Watch repeatability. Watch behavior change. Watch the leak trend line. And here's the question I want you to answer, because it reveals whether you're seeing the real battlefield. Do you think the bigger threat is the missile technology itself? Or the strategy behind it, saturation, time compression, and sensor pressure, designed to create just enough leaks to break trust and force escalation? Drop your take.